And we are live with our 65th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey everybody, welcome back once again. We're super excited to be here tonight. I know we've got another late one. We've kind of been shifting the times around because it's summer and hey, we're super professional, right? But tonight we have Adam with us, and we're going to jump right into all the things. I don't think we've got a lot of announcements or a lot of things that we want to make people aware of right at the top of the show. Outside of, hey, we are going to be at AppSec USA. We're teaching our course there, Global AppSec DC. Dang it, I keep doing that. We're teaching our secure code review course there, as well as AppSec Day in Melbourne and Black Hat Europe. Like, if you're going to be at any of those places, please, consider us for a course, or go, hang out or come say hi. Either way. Outside of that, I think we will be down at, in DEF CON or at DEF CON for, the duration of that conference. I'll be running Hacker Tracker there. Ken's running some events for work or something like that, so he may be around, or you may see him or you may not. But I think that's everything.
Probably be like a ghost, like normal.
Yeah, like normal. You have to get to the airport like 8 hours early or something like that. I don't know.
Of course you do. That's the only responsible way to do it. So
yes, of course. So yeah, I think that's everything right now. So we can jump in and introduce Adam. You want to take that, Ken?
Yeah, and real quick, can you hear me typing when I type on the screen, or is it properly going through the AirPods?
I think we're okay. I didn't notice anything.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would like, for those that are seeing this, my setup's all messed up tonight, so we're doing this from my kitchen as we've done before.
Here, kitty, right?
Oh my gosh, cat won't leave me alone. So, anyways, my fault. I'm the reason we're starting later. So sorry. I want to introduce Adam. Adam, thank you for joining us. Adam Baldwin is the VP of Security at NPM. If you don't know anything about, I'm sure people watching know a lot about Adam, but if you don't happen to know Adam, Adam basically, he helped. Is it right to say you helped build the Lyft security? Like, you were the co-founder of the Lyft node company?
Yep.
Yeah. And so you built that up. For years, Adam had been contributing to the node.js ecosystem security side of things. Adam has done a lot in the open source land. I've been a huge fan, watching Adam's work for years now. And we only got to meet once in person, I think, because we're both always moving around a lot at these conferences.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention. There is something else I wanted to mention, but I just can't remember. So with that in mind, welcome, Adam, and we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think initially we got into it last week. Ken and I were talking. It constantly comes up, like application security. We're constantly talking about third-party packages that developers use, and your work specifically on NSP, like at Lyft, like the node security project that you guys ran there for a long time. Mm-hmm. That was a kind of this crucial resource for identifying packages in the node ecosystem that have vulnerabilities in them. And I know you're continuing that work in with NPM audit and everything else that goes into it, correct?
Yep. Yeah, it originally started by being inspired by the Ruby Gem security project, right? They kind of got started at about the same time. And so we were like, well, build tooling. We see this, this is the way that we're going to get the applications that we're building owned, right? This is the way we're going to see security flaws come in there. And we needed a way to communicate the things that we were finding to the community, right?
Yeah. Okay. And so that's where it initially took off. So at the same time as the Ruby security gems were coming out, what was your experience in building that, right? How receptive was the community? What was that sounds like it was the impetus, but if you could kind of give a little background on that, that would be great. I mean, I don't want to hijack what Ken's got on his list, but
no. I mean, it's
kind of screw him. So
yeah. That's so guy who can't get his internet together. Sorry.
Yeah, so we were building software applications at AndYet, and it was software consultancy, and we needed to understand, kind of the, threat model around node applications, right? And so we were looking at this, and we saw this sort of budding community, right? It was very fresh. We're talking like 0.2. Node release. It's super early on. And so it's like, all right, we have the opportunity with this community to try to make security a core value, right? To try to get the things in place, a disclosure process, a channel to Node Core. And then we had this sort of like this ecosystem, right? We had Node Core and we had its processes. So we had the runtime, and then we had this ecosystem. And at the time of starting the Node Security project, there was 12,000 modules in the registry, right? It was a very young ecosystem, but even then that's a lot of software already, right? And that was growing at an incredible pace. When we first started it, it was, the tooling was pretty bad. Would be a good word. Like it was slow. Sometimes it wouldn't even finish, right? Because we basically, it was just kind of hacked together, right? Like, what do you want from me? Like, I write bad code. So, we put this together, and at least it got attention, right? So it was a way to communicate with the ecosystem about sort of found vulnerabilities, and we were auditing software at Lyft for many different companies. A lot of stuff focused around Node because that's where we started doing more talks and things, and so kind of snowballed in that direction. It was well received, and we tried to bring in a lot of. The goal was actually initially to create this tooling, but also to create a sort of a method for bringing in people to audit these 12,000 modules, right? Like we actually wanted to audit the whole damn thing, right? That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to boil the ocean, and people thought we were mad. So we basically, the plan was we would look for hotspots. We would put them in a list. We'd invite people in to sort of like go over those and vet them. But immediately it was like, do I trust this? I don't know who this person is that wants to be involved in that. And I think that hindered the project a little bit, sort of my inability to sort of trust people in general. Right. And so what that did was put the burden on sort of like a private team of people, a smaller team. It didn't grow as much as it could have, but that was the original goal. And I still stand by wanting to do that, even though the registry is over 1 million modules now. I want to get to the point where we can have that feedback loop, that life cycle of things.
Yeah. Well, and that was always it, right? Like I saw the work that was coming out of Lyft at the time, and both Ken and I know have gone and given talks on like node security, right? Like, like this is how you avoid SQL injection or whatever, right? Like,
right.
That's kind of a common thing when you're talking to developers, and but that was always it. We'd get to the third-party libraries, and I was like, hey, these guys are doing great work, but the problem is right now it's like there's 5 or 6 of you that are contributing, and we've got 600,000 packages that are out there, right? And that it's growing at like 600 packages a day, and I'm like
7,700 publishes a day right now.
Is that what we're at now?
Not new modules, but new module versions.
Yeah.
7,700.
Yeah, and like when you start to think about that as a like, okay, from a manual perspective, you've got work for the next 500 years, right? Like if it's a couple of guys, so it's you can't do it, right? So you've got to figure out different approaches to it for sure. Whether it is scaling up and allowing other people to do the auditing and having some sort of a checklist, whatever, right? So I mean that was why I think that's what made us so excited when like Node Security project and you guys got acquired by the NPM team, because it was like, okay, that makes more sense, right? From my perspective, right, looking at as a kind of an outsider. Yep. If you're building in the security into that main, package manager, you're going to get more traction, I guess. Have you seen that grow since you've been there? Are you seeing other people jump in, or how's that working?
So we were getting 400,000 downloads a week with NSP, right? We had just a pile of people using that tooling. Yeah. But corollary, we came to NPM, we integrated it with NPM install. So during install, you see some vulnerability warnings, right? Like this is bringing in some known vulnerabilities. And we turned that on for 11 million users, right? So all of a sudden we made security kind of top of mind, like what is this? And it made them curious. It made some people pissed off, right? Like, what is this? You know, they need to fix it, and some things can't be fixed. Like, there's just no fix for it. So it did cause a little bit of frustration and burden, but for the most part, we gave them npm audit. You could see kind of what was in the database and what you were using. We gave them npm audit fix so that you could just be like, oh, it just automatically installed the fixed version if it fits your criteria or the project's dependency criteria, and that. I mean, I think that's a huge win in general for getting security in front of developers' brains, right? Like getting it top of mind. I don't know where else I was going to go with that, but
no. I mean,
there was one thing I wanted to add. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Well, there are actually a couple of things. So you had mentioned when you were first talking about which modules you're going to analyze, you had mentioned hotspots. What are like some of the criteria for what classifies as a hotspot?
So it's so, it was trying to automate the things that we were manually searching for. So back then it was like, okay, child process.exec. Well, that's a sync, right? Untrusted user input ends up in child process.exec. You have a bad time. And so establishing those sort of patterns, the same things that we were looking at as we manually audited applications. But back then we just had grep, and then beyond grep, which people laugh at that, but it's a hell of a tool, right? It's you can find bugs.
I'll tell you, I'm laughing now because we last week, this was part of the discussion and sort of a back and forth with one of the folks watching Magno, was like, well, yes, you can't do an audit of every single module or gem or egg or whatever you want to call it, but you can look for, like you said, child process.exec or something like that. Using regex, and I think we're going to hear more about like the efficacy, it sounds like, of or lack thereof of that.
Well, yeah. So the initial run of those 12,000 modules, we found 600 potential instances, right? And then we had to kind of grind through that. And then beyond grep, like we ended up with ESLint security rules, which we built out, which takes that a little bit further, where we parse the JavaScript into like a syntax tree, and then basically look for patterns that way. So you can say that, okay, you see there's child process.exec, and you see that there's like, okay, it's past a non-literal string. If it's a literal string, then like, who cares? Oh, it's a non-literal. There's a potential for user input. Like we didn't do the full control flow and data flow and taint analysis there, mostly because I just don't have the time to write all that code. And also it's JavaScript and it's really, really hard. But now you have, and so now, we're getting to the point where we've got really interesting tools. I'm not one to vendor plug, and I haven't really used the tool much. SEML, return to corp, some of those things that are offering that type of pattern search at scale, which is really interesting. When you think about a corpus of code like we have to look at. So
SEML, is that Microsoft?
No, but Microsoft did do a bunch of stuff recently with SEML and was talking about it. So SEMMLE.
Yeah, I feel like I'd heard
they were doing a bunch of stuff with them, but
yeah, they were actually. Stefan's been talking about them quite a bit, Ken. That's probably where you've been hearing it. Well, so it's definitely on the list. There's some cool stuff that's going on there. Adam's exactly right. As far as like, you should look into it more if you haven't yet. So I'll find a link for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered your original question. In fact, I don't even remember what that was. So.
Oh, it doesn't matter. But no, because basically we were just talking about like, hey, so basically like any audit of gems typically relies upon, libraries relies upon like CV match, like this version matches, a CV or whatever.
Yep.
Right. So the idea was like, well, okay, what can we do as a company internally to sort of catch libraries that are backdoored before there's obviously an advisory out. And I mean, that was one of the things that we were kind of passing around last week, was like just, doing basic pattern matching on, on dangerous functions, basically. So yeah, I guess it's interesting to hear. I mean, I'm interested in the evolution of, going from a simple check like that. And also, like, because you said you had 600 results, so you just manually had to go through and say like false positive or not, basically.
Yeah, and the thing there is, like, we didn't really keep track of it, right? It was just, there's a spreadsheet, like, let's go to town. And we've since then built some workflow tools and stuff to help with that. But yeah, it was a manual effort.
It's a bit of a problem, like everybody's facing right now, is this idea of making sure that your supply chain is essentially, I mean, it's not like right now it's new or anything like that. Obviously, we're talking about things that have been going on for years, but
I think that with Perl, right? Even like CPAN, right? Like this existed back then. It's not going away, right? We're continuing to consume more open source just because it's convenient. And the problem's already solved. Why not grab a bunch of Lego bricks and stick them together?
Yeah, I mean, I think didn't you quote it as like 97% of Node applications are,
and that's being generous. When we were at Lyft, we saw like 1% less, right? Like, you're grabbing all these modules and you just kind of stick them together and stream data through them, and it's sometimes very, very low, right? And what you're actually shipping to production is code that you wrote. In a lot of those applications. And so I think the 97% is based on some a bit of hand waving, but we've looked into it a number of times, and it varies drastically. But yeah, it's a lot.
Dang.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say that, like, it makes total sense from a developer's perspective. Like, when I first heard that, like, statistic come out of your talk at the LocoMoco Sec, I was just like, at first I was like taken aback a little bit, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, no, like, since like you said, since the CPAN days, how much have I depended on Perl modules or Python modules or NPM packages or Ruby packages to actually do things for me that are core functionality of my application? I mean, as simple as, hey, I need to retrieve something from a web page. When was the last time you actually wrote a TCP stack or like any of that?
Because I shouldn't. Because, like, if it's a solved problem by somebody that intelligently put thought into the design of that software, like, it's a solved problem, right? And it's a road already paved. Like, don't bother.
Yeah, and I mean, we're starting to do the same thing, like, in the cloud as well, right? Like, I'm thinking about a lot of these applications where we're streaming data into AWS or GCP or whatever. And it's a very similar thing that we're starting to do with it. Hey, we've got all these services and we've got servers and whatever. We're just piecing them together with a little bit of Lambda code. And I mean, realistically, we're doing it. It's their code that's running everything, but we're just using it in a slightly different way, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you got to put your own spin on top of it and your custom whatever. But it has its downside. There's just it does. There's a huge security risk that's there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, what other downsides are you talking about?
Well,
just a performance perspective or whatever?
No, just in the security perspective. I was trying to remember something that I wanted to add, which is, like, ultimately, at the end of the day, we use this, and you're responsible for what you require, right? For what you pull into your application as an organization. And we're talking about sort of like auditing things, and we've got lots of organizations and companies doing this auditing. Right? Like, Microsoft brings in tons of open source, like, they're auditing it. Uber's auditing it. We heard it at LocoMoco Sec, right? I think it was Uber. Those companies that are consuming this, they're doing it. And the results of that work go into the ether.
Oh,
they're dissipated. They're internal only resources. And we never hear that, company X said this module is good enough for us, right? And that's a huge signal from an ecosystem safety perspective, right? And we never get that out. And I would really like to find a way to capture that. But it's going to be like, there's no way legal is going to ever sign off on any of those places to share that kind of data, right? So,
yeah, that's interesting because you talk about it, and I'm thinking about past lives, right? Like right now, I'm on the consulting side of things, but being an architect at other places, and we had implemented, a static analysis tool, and they're like, oh, the developers want to use open source software, and so we started to do something similar, right? It was like, hey, guess what? If we can scan, it's Java code. Let's scan it. Let's take a look at it and see what the static analyzer thinks about it, right? But we always had the problem that they never wanted us to sign off on putting those results out there because, hey, guess what? Those third-party libraries are 90% of our code. If we tell people what we're using for our secret sauce, even though it's open source, guess what? They could replicate it. And I'm like, really? But they couldn't. Like, you've got other, but yeah. So I get what you're saying. I don't know of a good way though to actually share that data. I do know in the financial services space that they've got a lot of like sharing that's going on from like a financial risk perspective, but I don't know if they've actually approached it from a technical risk, right? Like getting the development teams to talk to each other about what they're actually using would be a huge win, right? Yep. From that perspective. So
just sharing that data, like, the same way, like I think security contributions, it's the same as like, a documentation contribution to a repo. Like that's a valid contribution. A security review is also a valid contribution, right? But again, that just like we've seen in the consulting space, that varies drastically from person to person. Did you know your head from a hole in the ground when you looked at it? I don't know. Like, I've missed things, right?
Yeah.
Like,
we all have, right? Like you have to vet the auditors, right? So you want to come up with an auditing framework? Is that what you're saying?
We've got I got something in works. I won't spill the beans completely, okay. But something in this area. The other thing too, though, is open source. Like it's double-edged sword because companies also put their code out in their version control and it's public and on GitHub or whatever and now all of a sudden as an attacker I know your inventory. I know your bill of materials. I know what you have.
Yep.
I know to hit you where it hurts, right? It's not just we got a domain and now we can enumerate. This is part of an attacker's enumeration step now.
Yeah. You talk about the OSM guides that are out there, right? I mean, even if you look at some of the stuff that's coming out of Bugcrowd, like Jason Haddix, when he talks about his like bug hunters methodology. And that's one of the things they do is, hey, cruise LinkedIn, cruise GitHub, and see what the organizations put out there because guess what?
Job recs, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it tells you exactly what's there. I mean, come on, we got GitHub and NPM here on the podcast tonight, right? Like you guys should be able to tell me something about organizations and what they do internally, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You would think. No. Yeah, no. I mean, where to begin? I mean, I have so many questions. Like one that's burning in my head is like, what do you? I mean, do you talk to companies and find out? I would imagine you, as the VP of security, probably reach out to various companies and hear, like, what are their biggest headaches when it comes to package management. Like, what are the common concerns? What are the common solutions? Like we talked about, some people use. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like you said, it doesn't really matter the vendor, right? It could be Black Duck, it could be whoever. Like it doesn't really matter. You could be using dependency check, whatever. Like, what are where are the gaps? Like the biggest gaps that we're seeing right now? And
that whole scene is like a really bad like database that is like they eventually become consistent, right? Like all the services, like fighting for like that data first, and it comes from CVE, or we got the most complete database, or we have the most quality database, and it's a shitty arms race. And I'm out, right? Like when it comes to that, like we're like we maintain we have our standards for maintaining that, I think what it comes down to is that when I talk to companies, and I ask them what they care about and what they're scared of, and I hear malware. And I look at the fact that we do 7,700 publishes a day, 2.2 billion downloads a day. The number of malware publishes that we've had and discovered, I'm sure there's some out there that we haven't discovered. Like that happens. It's a natural part of the ecosystem. Is a very, very small piece of that, right? And so I hear we're afraid of malware because usually it's because they haven't built their infrastructure in such a way as one machine can get owned and it's going to take down their whole organization, right? There's bigger problems there, and everyone's blaming open source and these installable things. But malware is going to happen. So really, that's what I hear. I hear we're afraid of this particular threat. And then the next level down is sort of like, we want the things that we're consuming to be high quality, and we want to be able to depend on them, right? So again, that comes back to like the maintainers, right? We want to rely on this piece of software. We're not going to give to the community whatsoever, and we want to continue to have this maintainer just give us this capability for free. That's what they want. They want their cake and they want to eat it too, and they just want to just consume. And in that consumption story, right? That's what they want. I mean, that's like I'm being a little negative there, but that's what we see. That's
no. I mean, it's the same thing. Like my wife and I talk about this on. Do you guys do like Facebook for your HOA, like or anything like that?
No, we don't.
No, probably for the best. The one thing you consistently see on there is like somebody's like, oh. A window install person. I want it today. I want to pay nothing, and it's got to be great work. And you're like, you can't do that. You got to pick 1, 2, not all 3. You can't have all
it's
three.
A standard, yeah. But open source consistently wants all 3, right? Like or consumers of open source. And I think
that's basically everybody, though, right? I mean, it's even large enterprise people that could presumably pay to have developers write these libraries.
They could pay a fraction of one of the developer's salary and make a considerable donation and also like again I said this is LocoMoco Sec and developer burnout is attackable surface, right? Like it makes the social engineering attacks against those modules a lot easier. Right? If you have a maintainer that's kind of burned out and isn't maintaining those libraries, you can come in and kick in some basic contributions, and then they're like, oh, they're a good actor. Boom. Not really realizing that all of a sudden one of the legs of their chair is missing, and they go to sit down. So.
Yeah. No, it's a real. I mean, that's the thing is because we were talking about this before the podcast. Like that is a. To hear that brought up as an attack surface, I mean, it was relevant, especially because it was around that time where I don't even remember the module now. But which module was it where the permissions were like handed off because the developer was like, I don't really want to.
It was event stream.
Event stream. There you go.
Yep.
Sorry. It's hard. There have been a few libraries compromised just in the last few months, so it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, event stream.
In all ecosystems.
Yeah, there's been a few. So that was event stream, and and Dominic's a great prolific developer, right? I know him personally, and he's a great person that would never knowingly do that, right? Like, but put in a situation where, how do you vet somebody? Like, how do you vet somebody on the internet, right? Like, and even then, like, you could, we had this recently too, like a falling out amongst contributors. That falling out, somebody can change from being an ally to being somebody else overnight. And even if you, vetted somebody and had some kind of way of vetting trustworthiness, people change, and people get hangry, and like whatever, like here, have a Snickers. But like so people can change overnight in their affiliations or motivations or whatever. So I think that with that, for me, like securing, my open source projects, it's all about moving with intent from one state to the next. And that's why I look at these things like automating dependency updates. When you talk about getting rid of like known vulnerabilities, that's great. But then when you think about the malware case, like moving slow, you get rid of you kind of guard against malware. Potentially moving fast, you kind of get rid of these known vulnerabilities. And so it's really about moving at the right pace. And that's hard because that's resource intensive.
Yeah. When you say move fast with known vulnerabilities, you're talking about like an actual database like CV or whatever.
Yeah, like npm audit or stuff GitHub provides, like or any of those, right? Like where you can sort of like move really, move fast because we've got a signal, we've got an update, it's related to a CV, we can go apply this, and that's great. But what happens in the instance where somebody basically publishes a vulnerability in something, the next version has malware in it, you submit the CV yourself, now it triggers a bunch of builds to automatically pull that in and deploy your malware, right? Like there's an art to moving at the right speed with this stuff.
And going back to like when you guys were talking about open source, and I apologize, I cut out a little bit. Again, crap connection tonight, but were you talking about like reading, say I'm a company, I put some of the code that I'm running in prod, I make that public, and like you've got my, I don't know, my requirements.txt or my package.json or whatever, like basically you can go through, look at the libraries that app would be relying upon, and then that would be like where you try to pivot next, maybe.
Yeah. Because if that's in prod, right? First of all, you enumerate the dependencies. You have that. You enumerate the authors. So you have a bunch of different attackable places. I can attack their npm account, right, of one of those maintainers, and because there's lots of maintainers, I might get lucky. I can try to be a nice person on GitHub, right, and submit a PR and slip in a dependency or something like that. That's what we saw with the Komodo platform one, the most recent one, Electron Native Notify. The module was valid. The contribution was valid. I mean, the signs were there that was kind of a odd user, but as soon as they got it accepted, then all of a sudden the module, if you went and audited it, then it got flipped over to being malware.
So that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's like it's just a sequence of events, and I mean, hell, you could time it where you submitted a PR and then submitted an update, and like the PR saw one thing, the build system got malware. Like, there's races there with Semver, right? This is where I'd say Semver considered harmful, and everyone gets mad at me. But
no, go ahead and expand upon that. I'd love to hear more.
Oh, I mean, just the fact that like you sort of, instead of pinning dependencies, right? Like you can assert a contract, a Semver contract, which is like, I want any major, I don't bump major because that's probably a breaking change, but let any minor or patch in, or just let any patch version in, because usually that's safe. But that's typically what we're seeing now is like just bumping a patch release, own an account, bump a patch release. Now Greenkeeper pops off, or whatever dependency bots pop off, submits a PR, those get brought in, things move forward.
Get pushed out.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, I also feel like you're talking about the main, like the kind of the first level dependencies of an application. And like even with like event stream, the whole tree is such it's a huge attack surface when you start looking at it. It's not like initially I may be only pulling in 5-6 packages, but those depend on 5-6 packages each, which also depend on 5-6 packages before you actually get to this kind of full thing. And one of them has like a package that's locked, that's out of date, or whatever in that whole stream. Yep. It's a huge mess. I mean, that's why like npm audit is such a good,
it's nice, but
canary there. But yeah.
What the hell was I just gonna say? The visual sort of like metaphor that I like is it's an iceberg, You see the top level dependencies. That's what you care about, right? But it's there's things lurking, right? Like it's got a big underneath.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's super hard to protect against from a like developer perspective, because again, those dependencies are so crucial to your application that you can't necessarily just turn them off when something happens. So you are dependent on NPM or another service provider to actually patch it for you or fix it for you. So
yeah. And am I qualified to patch those things? I don't know. Some people have seen my code, but that's the thing, is that this goes back to entitled open source users in terms of like wanting the thing, but not wanting to help fix it. Sling a PR, sling a patch. Those contributions are so important to keep that ecosystem moving forward. And companies are positioned to do that, to donate some of their development time to keep the foundation of what they rely on, stable.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
And go to, if you're a corp.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you're a corporation and you're listening out there, go to the main sponsor them. If they're on GitHub, which they probably are, you should go there and do that.
Shameless plug, right?
Shameless, absolutely shameless plug. No, but seriously, like there's ways to donate. There's Patreon, there's like tons of ways to donate. So it's there's various mediums to do it.
Oh yeah.
You should totally do that if you can do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the developer won't say no, right?
We had And Yet way back when I think we were giving some of the authors of some of the stuff we relied on, like we were giving out thousands of dollars a month, way back when, because we were just like, we need them to keep this stuff going, right? And like support them and just keep on doing it. Substack being one of those developers, but yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, one thing we didn't really talk too much about it. I mean, because you just mentioned And Yet, and we've kind of gotten right into the meat of the discussion. But like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I've watched your work for years, tweeted back at you quite a bit, to ask questions or whatever, gain some insights from you. I think that while Seth and I may know your backstory a bit, and we can certainly link to your mentorship story, it'd be awesome to hear a little bit about, how you came into security, at what point in your life you knew security was your thing, and sort of backtrack and just, hear a little bit more about you.
I still don't know if that's my thing. So yeah, it really started off like the curiosity as a kid, right? Like I'm old enough to know what packet radio and BBSs are. And so, I really got my start by getting in trouble on a local bulletin board system, a 2-line bulletin board system of all things, right? Like it was,
you were living the high life, 2 lines. You could actually chat.
It was 1,300 people town in rural Minnesota, right? Middle of nowhere. So I got in trouble, and it was kind of the proprietor of the BBS was like, hey, you gave me basically a talking about ethics and said, hey, you want to be co-sysop, co-system operator, right? And I was like, cool, I'll do that. And then he's like, you want a job, fixing PCs and stuff after school? So I was like, it was paid a whole $4.25 at the time, an hour. But the thing there, the blessing that I was like, yeah, sure, I get to hang out and work on tech. I can't afford, these kind of graphics cards and all this stuff, back in the Sound Blaster days. I can't, I was getting that, but also he's like, oh, you're into security stuff. He's like, yeah, I'll teach you, some C, I'll teach you some Visual Basic. I'll teach you reverse engineering with soft ice, right? How to remove that neg screen from, that shareware back in the day. So I kind of got my, a taste there. And, that grew that mentorship and that start grew to getting me my first job out, when I sort of graduated and went to college, which I did horribly at. got my job at that ISP. That ISP got bought. ISPs are a great place to get a lot of experience on networking and systems and getting stuff owned. I told you.
Hi.
The 5-year-old would.
You called it. You called it.
Called it. Yeah.
Yeah, and when the dog showed up too. Anyway, is everything okay?
Hi.
We're live here. We're talking to the internet. You want to yell "Hack the Planet"?
Hey.
No. Okay.
Hi. Okay.
Anyway, hopefully, if we can finish off here. Anyway, got started there and ended up at ISP land, and that mentorship. What's interesting about that is I ended up at Symantec, and basically figured out that I wanted to start a company, which was a horrible idea, but we made it work. And what's interesting is that sort of mentorship. When I left, we'd started an ISP, and that ISP grew into the largest rural wireless ISP in Minnesota. And what ended up happening was this sort of mentor. They called me up and said, hey, Jim has cancer. We need some help getting knowledge transferred from him to the rest of the team. And he gave us your name. And I was like, what? I haven't talked to him in how many years? And this kind of came up. What's interesting is I got that phone call as I was leaving my last consulting gig at Symantec in the parking lot, last day. And they were our first customer. They were the only reason that we survived as a company. We got sort of this contract with them, kind of retainer, and that paid our bills while we established a bunch of other clients, which eventually that company at Ingenuity turned into Lyft, and then kind of came here. But it just kind of goes to show you that giving people an opportunity. He didn't need to give me anything, right? But he took the time to teach me and train me, and that's paid off my entire career. And so spending some time to share what and putting it out there, right? That you learn a technique or just learn something that somebody else already knows. Give them credit, share it, give them an opportunity, to screw it up or to succeed or whatever. But it may pay off down the line, right?
I feel like that goes both ways though too, because you were probably, not probably, you're definitely right. Somebody who's easy to mentor, who does what's asked of them, who will follow through and can be reliable, right? I would imagine maybe you're maybe he just had a soft spot for you, but I imagine that's sort of how that went, right?
Yeah, I was I remember getting handed the Windows 32 internals book that was this thick. And he's like, here's your guide to all that stuff. He's like, you don't have to read it cover to cover, but
here's your guide. Good luck. Yeah.
Anyway, just was given a lot of opportunity to learn and grow, and also to fail. So he gave me opportunity. I fixed a friend of the family's computer, and they gave me $20, right? And I think I'd said something about it, and he goes, well, that's moonlighting, right? Because that was kind of my job, right? That was taking kind of money from the shop, and so he didn't really ever scold me, but he always took time to talk things through about ethics or responsibility, or just promises and following through, right? That was always just it's just a great opportunity. And so I ended. Yeah,
it's more than technical mentorship. Basically, it's rounding you off as an individual, or helping shape you as an individual.
Yeah, definitely a huge impact.
Leader.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say as I rip my headphones out of my. I had the same thing happen at Symantec too. I didn't have a degree, and I did an interview there, and Tim Gallo was the person who interviewed me. 17-minute phone interview. I still remember looking at it. It was 17 minutes, and I basically had a job offer the next day. It's and I didn't have a degree. I didn't have all of the things, but he knew, I don't know, gave me the opportunity to kind of come in, and then it was easy to move from there once inside the company. But again, somebody sort of taking a chance, taking on me. So
what made you decide you wanted to run your own company? like people ask, I'm sure Seth, people ask you because you've had a couple now. So I get asked though, like, I'm thinking about starting a business, and I'm like, I don't know, like I'm not the wrong person to talk to. Like I have no love for it. Like, it's not that it's just really hard. Like you have to really, I feel like you have to want that, but understand what all comes along with it. But yeah, I mean, why? I mean, I guess
I was an ignorant
question.
kid. I was an ignorant kid, and I think that in that situation, ignorance is bliss, right? I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I stubbornly just said, I'm going to do it, and I can do it better. The consulting arm of Symantec was kind of falling apart at that point, and I was doing a lot of work, and I was seeing I was seeing what I was producing for the dollar amounts they were charging.
Yeah,
and I was like, I can do this, and was ridiculous, at the time. We made it work, right? And then, but that was kind of the impetus was, which is funny because that right before I quit to go do that, I got my degree. Like I did it all backwards. I got my degree and then I promptly didn't need it. Yeah.
No, I mean,
that's just pretty standard, right? Yeah.
I want these fact checks. Yeah.
Sorry, my audio is cutting a lot. You guys continue. I'm cutting out.
Oh, you're fine, Ken. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, exactly what you're saying, though, Adam. I think people underestimate, right? Going into starting a business, you go in pretty blind the first time as far as, oh, crap, what does overhead actually look like? Yeah, Symantec charges a certain rate, but then you also think about the overhead that's involved in that rate and the name and everything else that they've been all build up over the years. And it's, there's a lot that goes into it. And so you understand that more after you've tried to do it than before, because it's really easy. I mean, I know my first gig at Fishnet, and I started seeing those rates that they were charging people and the amounts, and I'm like, holy crap, right? Yeah, same sort of thing. And then when you get out there and you're like, oh yeah, you had 300 people on staff, and you've got all this support staff, and blah, 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 blah. And
oh my God! As soon as we started doing mobile assessments, I mean, the rate on mobile when that was crazy. Like just coming out. I mean, one assessment, you're good for a while, man. You can pay your bills for a hot minute.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think you're right. Ignorance is bliss when it comes to it, right? There's a lot of the small consulting firms. That's where it starts. And
what's interesting too is kind of tying it back to the opportunity side of things, right? With the mentorship, I can tie back not only just to like Jim and the ISP customer, but then our next anchor customer was a company called Indeniro. And Jessica Ma was pre-funded. So we did like a week of work for like pennies, right? But we negotiated being a part of their banner rotation. So they took a chance on us. We were like a nobody AppSec kind of company, and they put us in their rotation. Well, Chris Wanstrath saw the TechCrunch and saw our name on the banner, and so we got GitHub as a client because of that. And then because we got GitHub as a client, we got listed on the security page, and because of that, it snowballed into everything else. And so it's like, again, somebody sort of taking a chance and an opportunity. Like you usually can tie these things back, but I can definitely tie it. Like that's a sequence of events that made it so that we were successful. Obviously, we did what I felt quality work as well, and that helped. But
working hard and being a good person, I mean, it's crazy how simple that sounds, but that's like, just be a good person, work hard. I mean, honestly,
answer the phone, show up, do good work.
Yeah. Do what you said you were going to do. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I burned so many joking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I burned so many weekends, saying that this is the scope that I'd cover for this. It's like, well, I said I was going to do it. I got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And hence you learn about padding, right?
Yes. Hence you learn about how to scope properly.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny how it all kind of comes full circle when you start thinking about it, right?
Yep.
But I mean, that's cool. I know we've talked about mentors a couple of times, and actually, being a mentor, but also looking for mentors that are willing to kind of give out that, or to work with someone that hasn't been in the industry for quite as long, or is looking for something extra. Right? I mean, that was a big thing that Chris was talking about, right? Chris Gates, when we had him on, because it is, I think about, my time and, what you're saying. And there's a lot of, hey, the people that I've really connected with, like the relationship has started out as something like that, right?
Yep.
It's a manager that I had like early on in my career who was just basically like, hey, I'm going to take a chance on you because I need somebody and you seem sharp, and guess what? You're asking for too little pay, right? Because if I only pay you that, I can't, in a year you're going to leave because I can't give you that big of a raise, right? Stuff like that happens all the time. And yeah, it means that like when I turn around and there's somebody that's sharp on the other side that I want to bring in, it makes me more likely to be like, hey, guess what? I see where you're at now, and I'd rather just have you as a resource than, pay you absolutely minimum what I could. Right?
Yep. Yeah, there's lots that we have to teach.
Yeah. So how big is your team over there, right?
Team at NPM is 4 people right now, and I'm hiring a security engineer, my 5th. So
awesome.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys were for a while, going back to the consulting side, it's always interesting because Seth and I have done this. We've tried it, which is doing like some services to fund development. So is that what you were doing? Like, were you bootstrapped the whole time when, like using services to fund the tech, or?
We never got any funding from day one. It was completely bootstrapped. And we lasted 10 years and 9 got acquired. So yeah, we were effectively, it was all services driven, and NSP was like this side project, really. And then we decided like, we should have done this earlier. Like we decided to kind of start to monetize it and, turn it into like a platform. And, that conversation with the interesting thing is like when we first started NSP, we talked to Isaac. We were like, how do we get this built in? Right. Like, and it was just too early. They really felt like it was worth something. And like it wasn't a company yet. And it was like, it's this kind of open source, and, we never got it. We should have pushed harder on it, frankly. But anyway, yeah, that was, I don't know where I was going with that, but
it's late. No, we appreciate you joining late too.
Yeah.
I'm joining this late. Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, I was half kidding about, I was joking, but building a business is incredibly hard. And I think that like, one thing that might be helpful is to share with people, some of those, like, this is not, you've been doing this for a while. So, any thoughts besides being a good person and having a good work ethic, what sort of things would you give people who are looking to maybe start a consultancy?
Oh man.
Besides don't.
Besides don't do it.
That was loaded, Ken. Wow, I wasn't sure where I was going with that.
Besides don't. That's hard. I learned so much stuff. Really the core of it is what you said. But, do what you're going to say, show up, and all that other stuff. The rest of it is the hidden stuff. You're going to spend time on marketing. You're going to spend time on sales. So you can't say, well, I'm not going to be a salesperson and start a company. Like, too bad you're a salesperson. But you get to do it your way. I did sales my way with integrity, and I told people what we were going to give them and told them what we couldn't give them. And that usually was met with a thank you, rather than oh, well, you're telling me we're going to give a pen test, but what do you mean we still might get owned? What? Like, how does this work? Like, and so trying to set their expectations properly of how this works and how this fits into their program and all that other stuff. other than that, man, there's just so much. Set aside money for taxes. Do that. We did. I knew about
Don't forget
it.
about that.
Uncle Sam wants their money, and we never had a problem with that. But I know there's been a few friends that have gotten caught up in that, and standard like just the other thing I forgot to mention this. Actually, ask people who have been in this situation, right? Like we talk about mentors and we talk about like relationships. I always put that out there. Anybody can email me. It's adam@npmjs.com. Or Twitter, Adam_Baldwin at Twitter. Anybody can send me questions. I will do my best to answer them genuinely. And nobody ever asks. Nobody ever says, hey, like you've got this experience. What should I do in this situation? Nobody asks. Like I'm available, and like I'm just saying that. Don't flood my freaking inbox now, please. But
I'm just gonna email you questions all day long, Adam.
But it's true. Like, and so I started doing that when I started at NPM. I started reaching out to the people I knew from that, like the clients that I was working with. I'm like, I was doing offense. I'm now in a defensive role. I'm not doing services. I'm doing product. My world was turned upside down. And so the first thing I did was like, I reached out to some of those people. I'm like, how do I measure success? What are the first three things that I should be doing? Like asking some of those questions, because those people have been there. They've done it. Like I only, I've done defense, but it was in a different era. And so, that's what I did. Just reach out, because I was surprised. I was very nervous and, frankly, a bit scared to kind of reach out to some of these people, because they're personalities in the community, some of them. And it's like, man, you're kind of that rock star personality. And turns out they're just people. Turns out they were happy to grab a quick video chat and give me advice. Like I was blown away. So
yeah, don't hero worship. That is a bad road to go down.
It's hard. It's hard to not when you're just like, you're cool.
Oh no. Saying that I'm sure all three of us made that mistake. Yeah. And even still, sometimes when you meet people, you're like, oh, they're so cool, but like then you invite them on your podcast, and they come on and they tell you all about open source is doomed. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Open source is doomed. Is that the name of this episode?
I hope not. I hope not.
I would not say that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come. I think it's cyclic. Everything's cyclic, right? So ebb and flow. Yeah. We'll see new challenges, and we'll build tools and technology,
and then we'll reinvent the wheel again, right?
Yeah, and that's what I didn't want to see happen with Node, right? We saw like I loved PHP. Like it was a transformative language from going from a static sites to like dynamic sites, and we saw kind of the problems it had, and the things there. And I was like, I want this ecosystem to be better. I want things to be better. And we still have an opportunity, right? But it's like ground floor. Like you don't get that opportunity very often.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely you're right. The way that PHP went, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not dogging on it, because I loved it, but lots of bugs, and everything has bugs, but just in maturing, I was like, well, we have all these communities where we've learned things from, whether it's PHP or other languages, right? Like we stand on the shoulder of giants, right? Like, okay, we don't have to regress. We don't have to relive all of this. Hopefully we'll invent our new horrible problems, and learn from the past, hopefully. But
yeah. I mean, I think
here we are, years.
Yeah, we're years later.
I'm just having this terrible lag. I'm just gonna stop. My lag is so bad.
I don't even know where
technology.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I definitely feel like we get better, but it seems like we learn those same lessons over and over, right? As a developer, I do, right? Definitely when I get back into projects, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I have to do X, Y, and Z, because if I don't, from a business perspective, we do the same thing, right? Like I almost think it's just human nature, right? You know,
we're
if it
gonna
isn't
relive
something,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
You can't just give a new developer like, welcome to the ecosystem. Here's your giant guide of all of the history of everything that you should know about so that you don't F everything up going forward, right? Like it just doesn't work like that. You know, you can have some guides and some handholds, but like sometimes as a developer, you just have to go through it and you just have to write some bad code and I don't know, but
yeah. Well, yeah, I look back at my PHP code from the day, right? You know, and it's horrid, right? Like I know, yeah. We're not going there anymore, but that's exactly what everybody's got to learn somehow. And I know when we've had Manico and others on, they've talked about like how they want to build, or you know, as a security like industry, or as like you were developing these frameworks, like we want to put the rails in place so that the failure isn't as bad when it really comes down to it.
right.
You know, so like, yeah, somebody does something bad or like insecure. Hey, guess what? The risk or the threat from that is way less than it was when, you know, we were back in the PHP days and we're just, you know, hard coding SQL injection everywhere, right? That was just the way that we did it. And, you know, but nowadays we know better, so we do better. But if we don't provide them with the tooling for that, it's almost on us that are creating those frameworks that we didn't give them a secure way to do it, right?
And that's kind of what I love about, you know, modern frameworks too. Like it's just we're starting to get rid of some of those bug classes a bit, right? Or we're starting to give at least some guardrails, right? It's like, okay, you're new to this, like do follow this pattern and you'll be okay. You know, with React or whatever, right? Like we're giving like it's harder to just, you know, dangerously set, you know, some HTML someplace. That was my first PHP app that I ever wrote, was like riddled with cross-site scripting. That was the first thing my friends did, was like put image tags and like marquees, and it's like, come on, get out of there.
Yeah. Yep. That sounds good, right? Sounds like you had good friends then, right?
Yeah, I mean that's part of how you learn, right? It's like it's embarrassing, but you know, same thing. You like, you know, you leave your laptop unlocked, and then somebody wants ice cream. Leave the laptop unlocked, and you get a little card that says, "Hey, you left your laptop unlocked, and now you learn."
Yeah.
Or it might be something worse than that, but I'm not going to promote that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was always it. You know, here you come back and they had turned your monitor upside down, or like, you know, flipped the whole screen so you couldn't see anything, and you have to figure out how to flip it back. Yeah, yep. So it's all part of a learning process for sure. And security is going to always be that way, right? There's always going to be, because we're seeing new classes of vulnerabilities, we're seeing new stuff pop up, and yes, it's not as dangerous as maybe it once was, but then we've got all the dependency issues that we're dealing with now, right? Like there's new vectors that keep popping up.
You trade, you almost trade one thing for another. Is there always going to be a balance? Like the scale's always.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhat even. Yeah, for sure. So, well, cool, Adam. We have been going for over an hour at this point.
I told you I was long-winded.
Oh, whatever. It goes. It's been awesome, man. Like it's good to finally like see you face to face, right? You know, from my perspective, and we'll definitely have to connect when we get down to Hacker Summer Camp down there, right?
Yes.
If you're going to be around.
Yep.
So outside of that, right? Like you said, you were going to be at DEF CON. Are there other places that people can connect with you? I mean, you gave out your email address. They're obviously welcome to use that, right? But any other places that you're going to be in the near term or the rest of the year that they could meet up and say hi?
Yeah, next, let's see, up next, I'm going to be at DEF CON, right? That's going to be coming up next for that. And then after that, I'm going to be at InfoSec Campout, which is outside of Seattle. You know, looks like a small, fun event, just a camp out. I'm going to be speaking there. Should be fun. So yeah, if you're in the Seattle area, definitely easy to pop out and either attend or come hang out and camp and tell scary stories.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that'd be good. You can always follow Adam on Twitter too, at Adam_Baldwin. Right, that's you.
Yeah, underscore is important. You'll if you don't put the underscore, you get the malicious actor.
Okay, there you go. You get your alternate identity. We see how it is, right? Yeah. You know, we know how it goes. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on, right? Like, it's very timely and relevant to talk about this stuff. And, you know, as you launch more things, and your daughter's fine. Super professional. Ken's petting his cat. So like it's obviously late in magic time. So
helmet, I mean, it's appropriate safety. Right?
Yeah, there we go. Stay safe, you know, so
safety third, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But otherwise, it's been great catching up and, you know, talking about all the things. You know, sometime we'll have to have you back on, you know, as you're launching your new stuff or whatever, right? If you come out with something cool, definitely be able to promote whatever, right? And if you guys are hiring, right, or if you're looking for a job, talk to Adam, you know.
Yep, hiring a security engineer for sure. We're she's saying safety first. That's hilarious. Anyway, thanks for having me on. It's been great pleasure to be on, and hopefully something, you know, all the listeners got something out of it, and it's a good time. So thanks.
Ken, any last minute thoughts?
Nope. Oh, well, yeah, one thing I was going to mention is that we are working on a blog for the podcast. So we've got the tech going for that now. We just have to actually write stuff. So we got a blog coming out. Maybe we'll even do, like, for friends, you know, they can throw some jobs on there or something. I don't know. We'll see. So that's pretty much all that I had to add. Besides, thank you, Adam, and thank you to the listeners.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk to everybody then.
Bye.